What is up, guys? Marquez back here in the studio. Today we will be comparing the Puma Clyde courts versus the Anta Kt4s. So if you want to know more details, specs about these two shoes, their performance review and the details of both shoes, I'll put the link up here. Before we go on to this comparison, I would just like to remind you guys the raffle is still on. You may still join. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Press the bell too if you haven't. And thank you for your support again. It will go a long way. So let's get on to the comparison of both shoes. Let's start off with the uppers of both shoes. This one, the Kt4s, has a knit-like upper. It's very structured, doesn't stretch that much. There's still a little stretch, but not that much. Even after playing with them for several times already, the knit has an underlying fabric. It holds the knit tight and it prevents it from stretching. As for the Puma Clydes, it's very similar to the Kt4s, but with a different pattern. It also has an underlining fabric below the knit, so it also prevents it from stretching. The upper of the Puma Clydes is also as supportive as the Kt4s, but for me, if I have to choose one upper, I'm kinda liking the Puma Clydes upper a bit more because, guys, this really kind of reminds me of the LeBron 15s. I don't know if Anta gave an effort to think that the upper that they made for the Kt4s is very similar to the LeBron 15s. It really blows my mind because when you first hold this, it really looks like the LeBron 15's upper. With that, I'm kind of liking the pattern here on the Puma Clydes because it has a more classic pattern. It gives you a very vintage, classic look vibe of the shoe. What Puma Clydes really wants to give off is that classic look, that 70s look. Because for all of you who doesn't know, the Puma Clydes came out during the 1970s, the early stages of NBA. So this was one of the performance shoe back then that came out, I think, the same time with the Converse, the Chucks. They used to hoop with the Chucks and also with the original Puma Clydes. So that's a trivia for me. I like the structure more of the upper of the Puma Clydes, and I think based on stretching wise, the Kt4s stretched just a bit, but the Puma Clydes didn't. Also, a plus point on the upper of the Puma Clydes is this logo here, a Puma logo, because it serves also as a support for your lateral movements. The Kt4s has this TPU plastic in the bottom. It goes really high up here. So for the upper material, I would choose the Puma Clydes. Now let's move on to the lacing system. Both shoes, it's a one booty upper. It has very similar lacing system. This collar area, it's quite similar. It's easy to put your foot in. For the tongue part, it's quite similar too. It's very well padded. They both have the similar neoprene material around the tongue part to add cushion when you tighten the laces of the shoes. And let's move on to the heel part or back part of the shoe. Kt4s here has a big TPU plastic that goes from the forefoot and goes up to the heel part of the shoe. Serves as a heel counter, heel support on your lateral movements, and also the cushion really goes up. It also serves as an external heel counter, which is very good. And as for the Puma Clydes, the external heel counter is this one, this shiny plastic. And this leather material also serves as a heel support. Heel support on both shoes is quite similar, very good. I like the step-in comfort in the heel. Both shoes also has keyless pillow, but I think the Kt4s has a thicker one. And it's like knobs around here. If you want a thicker Achilles pillow, Kt4s. Nice touch that Kt4 carried from the Kt3s is this hole here. Gives you more movements around your ankle, doesn't constrict you. While the heel counter on the Puma Clydes goes up here, the height of the heel counter is just enough to not bother me. This is a nice touch on the Kt4s because it acts like you're wearing a low top sneaker. Now let's move on to the insole of both shoes. The Puma Clydes has a thicker insole comparing to the Kt4s. Because when I'm pinching it, I'm already feeling the cushion. Step-in comfort, more on the Puma Clydes. So for the lateral outrigger, how wide the two shoes are, you can see that it's quite similar. Surface area around the forefoot is quite similar. It's not that narrow, it's not that wide, it's just enough. And there's enough lateral outriggers for both shoes. So for lateral support, I would give it a tie. Now moving on to the cushion on both shoes, this is the major difference. Anta uses a flash foam, their newest cushion setup. It's very plush. Impact protection is great. Even though you feel kind of high off the ground, there's enough court feel, enough bounciness, and responsiveness is also okay. The Puma Clydes have energy beads and ignite foam combination, which is also kind of similar to Boost and to the A foam. The A flash foam is a little bit bouncier comparing it to the cushion setup of the Puma Clydes, but the responsiveness of the cushion here in the Puma Clydes is a little bit better comparing it to the KT4s. So if you want more bounce and more plush, the A flash foam is for you, but if you want more responsiveness, the Puma Clydes. And as a side note, both cushion setup is kind of high off the ground, so be aware of that. Court feel on both shoes is not that great, but if you want cushion setup, impact protection, and just enough responsiveness, this too is okay. If you're a player who wants to be more closer to the ground and court feel is your #1 priority, you should stay away from these two shoes because it's the exact opposite. Now let's move on to the outsole of both shoes. For outdoor use, I think you can use the Puma Clydes more outdoor. The plastic rubber on the outsole is thicker and sturdier. This one's thick but still kind of flimsy. Patterns in the KT4's outsole might rip if you use it too much outdoors. So if you play more outdoors, the Puma Clydes is for you. Now as for the cushion for both shoes, on a clean court, both shoes are very grippy. But on a dusty court, that's where the major issue is. The Puma Clydes picks up a lot of dust comparing it to the KT4s. The KT4s perform better on a dusty court compared to the Puma Clydes. So if you play more on the dusty court, you're better off with the KT4s. If squeakiness is something you're into, like me, go with the KT4s. As for fit, if you're a normal footer like me, I went down half a size because it's knit. So if you're a wide footer, I'll suggest you to go true to size. Also, the fit of both shoes is very good. It hugs your foot very well. Just tighten the laces up and you're good to go. As for the pricing, it's $110 US. This is $120 US. So the KT4s is cheaper by $10, so that's not much. It's around 500 pesos. Which shoe would I recommend you? For me, on a clean court, I would prefer to play with this more because the only concern I have with the KT4s is the heel-to-toe transition is quite high. What I mean by that is the elevation of the foam is quite high from the forefoot going to the heel part. So if you're playing long hours, imagine you're like wearing high heels setup, so kind of tires your Achilles area or lower calf. That's what I experienced when I was playing this for a longer period of time. I wish that the inclination of the cushion is not that high. It would have been perfect. If I'm playing on a dusty court, I would rather play on the KT4s. So it really depends on your court condition, on where you play, how long you play. It also depends on your style of play. But as for me, if the court is in pristine condition, I would rather go with the Puma Clydes. So I hope I helped you guys out in choosing between the Puma Clydes and the KT4s. So this has been Mark Chess once again. Thank you for watching my video. I appreciate you and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.